Hi everyone, so today we are going to be talking about output functions in Python Shiny and how can you render these output functions in Python Shiny. So we are going to be first of all giving a minimal example of the output function. So let's say we have an app. First of all, we're going to import Shiny, import app, and import render, import UI, and also import render. Now we're going to be saying app UI is equals to UI.page fluid. So we are building our app now, our UI user interface, UI.h2, which let's say we're having an h2 hello shiny. And next we're going to be saying UI.input slider. So input slider now, we're going to be given an ID of n, then we're going to be giving the title of our input to be n, then it's going to be starting from 0 to 100, and the default value is going to be 20. Then the next we are going to give UI.output. So this is what we're going to be talking about now. This is the new thing I'm introducing, text verbatim. So this text verbatim is used when you want to output something like a code, which you are going to be doing now. Any code output that you have, use text verbatim, else you can just use regular output text. So this is our app UI now. Then the next we are going to go to define our server side. Let's say define server input, comma output, comma session. So then we're now going to say at output, we're going to use the at output decorator to make sure our output is that's also to render at output. Then render.text. So use render.text anytime you want to render text. Then we'll now define a function of our text output, which is this. So you have to make sure this ID that I gave me, because this is an ID I gave me, a txt, is also the same thing as the function that you are defining in this place. And also define, then return. Then we use f string n multiplied by 2 is, then we now say input.n. So we are referring now to this our input now. So we are going to multiply our input with what? With 2. So this is it now. Then we are going to save. Then we are now going to say shiny run app reload. We're going to now call it now using app is equals to app UI, comma server. So now we already have this. Then we now save, and we now call shiny run app reload. So this is going to run our app on this particular local host. So I'm going to click on it now, and you can see it that we're having it here. You can see hello shiny. You can see our app that we're having in this place. So based on this input, is going to multiply the number by 2. Any number that you have is your final number. So you can see 67 times 2 is giving us 134. When you also select 33 here, is giving us 66. So this is just a basic example of how our output works. Okay, so now that is it for just a basic minimal example on how the output looks like. So now let's look at the plot output. How does the plot output works? So in the plot output now, basically what we are doing in the plot output is we are going to be using the matplotlib. So if you don't have it, you can just do pip install matplotlib. So I'm going to be saying from matplotlib import pyplot as plt. So if you don't have matplotlib, install matplotlib. So import pyplot as plt. So since I don't have it, so I'm going to say pip install matplotlib. I'm using a virtual environment. So that is it for the matplotlib. So now we want to just create just a minimal output to show you how you can output in Python Shiny. So I'm going to be saying UI.output plot. UI.output plots. I'm going to be giving ID of scatter plot. So this is just a basic example. So I've already defined it in this place now. So what am I going to change on my server side? I'm not going to be using render.text because we are talking about output here. So I'm going to be using render.plot. So I'm going to be saying render.plot. Then I'm going to be changing this function here to scatter plot, which is my ID for the plot I want to output. It's going to become scatter plot, and I'm going to be returning plt.scatter 1, 2, 3. So we are going to plot in scatter plot of 1, 3 and 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. We want to plot a scatter plot of this. So this is basically what we are doing in this place. So now I've already saved it. And I'm now going back to run my app again. So you can see my scatter plots currently now. You can see it. So this is how you can output a plot using your output function. So if you want to output a plot, make sure the keyword here is output plots, and also make sure your render is rendering, your render decorator is render.plots, and you also define your output ID. Then you can define what you want to output. So that is it for outputting a plot. So the next thing now I'm going to be talking about is outputting a interactive plot. So this we can call a widget. So a widget is an interactive plot, basically most of the times plotly. So when you want to output a widget, you are going to be adding from, because you're not going to just be using normal shiny model, you're going to be using shiny widgets. So from shiny widgets, you're going to be importing output and widgets, and also render widgets. So these are what you're going to be outputting. So I also don't have this installed on my virtual environment, so let me just open a new PowerShell. So I'm going to say pip install shiny widgets. So pip install shiny widgets. So I've already started shiny, and also we'll be needing plotly because we want to build an interactive plot now. So import plotly.express as px. So this is what we are importing now, plotly.express as px. This is plotly. I'm also going to be installing that. I don't have it on my virtual environment, so if you notice I've been using a virtual environment throughout. Okay, so before it actually finishes installing, let's just go about with building what we're okay. It's already done. So pip install, we're going to be installing plotly. So before it's done installing, we're going to be changing output plot to output widget, because we are talking about an interactive plot. An output widget, we are going to be giving its ID of also scatter plots. It's like basically we're just doing the same thing we did earlier on. So scatter plots now, and we are going to be changing our rendering to render widgets. You know, we're no more talking about a static plot. Now this is an interactive plot which we are trying to build. So we're going to be using render widgets. And I've also defined our function here, which is scatter plot, which must be the same with the output. You can see as I'm highlighting it, it's highlighting it also at this place. It must be the same. Then I'm going to be defining my plotly function here. I'm going to be using px.scatter. So this is plotly function for building a scatter plot. X is equals to 1, 2, 3. Then comma y, which is equals to 4, 5, 6. So this is our scatter plot which we have now. So you can see it, we are using the output widget, and we are also using px.scatter. This is for we are also using the render widget for rendering it. So let it be done installing now. Once it's done installing, we just save it, and it's going to reload and show in this screen here. Okay, one important thing before I can continue is that we are not going to be using UI.output widget. It's supposed to be output widget. So I'm going to save this now and reload. So you can now see that we have an interactive plot. Can you see it now? Different from the static plot we plot earlier. So if you want plots like this in Shiny, you have to make sure you use scatter plot and also output widget. You are going to be able to get plots like this, nice looking plots like this. So you can see that the methodology is different. So the next output that I'll also be talking about is that of tables. So first of all, you have to have pandas installed. We're going to be importing pandas as PD. So once you have pandas installed, we are going to be using the UI.output table. So UI.output table. Can you see it? They are going to be giving the ID of data frame. So this ID of data frame is what we use to refer to this particular ID, that anything we define here should be shown in this particular output to the user. So what are we going to be using now? Instead of render widgets or render text or render plot, which we said, I'm going to be using render table. So render table is what you use. Render.table is what you use anytime you want to render a table. Then we're now going to be defining what we are using, which is data frame. But first of all, we need to create a data frame. So I'm going to be saying data frame here. Data frame. So, but we need to create a data frame. So I'm going to be saying data is going to be equal to, I'm going to use a dictionary. just the name of individuals. Name going to be John, and Jane, and Mike. You can also use Emily. Then so this is for the name column, and we are going to be having age. We're going to be using 25, 30, 35, 28. So let's just use as just a basic example. And after I've already defined our data in a dictionary, then we're going to convert it into a pandas data frame. I'm going to be using pd.data frame. Then we're going to be using data. Then we're going to now say return divf, since this is a function. We have to return df. So let's save. So this is supposed to be at this side. Sorry. Let's save. So you can see our data frame we already have now name, and you can see age. So you can see the function which we already defined currently. You can see it, our two columns, and you can see that it has already returned a data frame. So you use your output table to define your user interface, and also use render.table to render your table. So that is it for outputting table. So the next thing now I'm going to do is for text output. Earlier on it was for code output we did, where we use output text verbatim. For for code, so for normal text, I can just say UI.output. I can just say text, and I'll just define it as text, just like I did for that of output text verbatim. They're almost the same way, and you're going to be using what render.text, not render.table. So render.text, define text. So what is text? Text now is going to be return hello world. So you can see it, return hello world. Okay, so I've not given a comma in this place. Give a comma. So you can see now that we have our output now hello world. You can see it can have our names and also have our age. That's for the table. You can see I also have our output hello world. So we just need the output text, and we'll use the render.text. So this is it for output functions, and as you can also render them from your server side. The various output functions for table, we treated for table, for text, for code text, interactive plot, that is widgets, and also we treated for static plots. So these are those the ones you are going to be needing. You can also check more inside the documentation and look through the tutorial article that's going to be linked inside this particular video. Thank you very much. See you next time.